Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm Todd Banner. Well, sorry I haven't gotten a video up in a while. I have been very busy. One of the papers that I do photojournalism for is working on a community guide, and there is a special feature in that guide covering artists from the west side of Chicago. I've been running around doing portraits of these artists in addition to regular news photography. So pretty busy, which is actually, that's okay, because I get paid for each shoot. So more shoots, more I get paid. It's good. But today, point of this video is, well, I bought a new camera. Yeah, I know, gas. What did I buy? As folks who are subscribers or are following me know, I've had a Panasonic Lumix ZS200 1-inch sensor compact camera for over a year now. Been pretty well satisfied with it. The lens, pretty sharp through its zoom range. Actually, it's very sharp right in the center. And you know, it's been a good camera. However, I started thinking about the ZS200 and wondering if upgrading to that would have some advantages. So then I went online and looked and noticed Amazon was totally out of stock. I think they still are. I found a brand new one on B&H. And I really wanted to buy a brand new one because I figure I'm going to keep this camera for a long time. And I also figured that, you know, if it doesn't work out, if the lens isn't as good as the one on the ZS100, then I can always return it. So anyway, so it arrived, and here it is. And you know what? The first thing I noticed is the built-in grip, nice rubberized grip here, and a thumb grip on the back. This is way easier to hold in comparison to the ZS100. Now, in my video on this camera, I mentioned that I added some grippy material called Dragon Grips to this camera, because really this camera only has this little lip here and it's not easy to hold. And the thing is, the ZS200, actually, even with the grips on this thing, the ZS200 is just easier to hold. It also feels beefier. It's got a little bit more heft to it. I like that. Just makes the camera feel a little bit better built. They're about the same size. I would say the ZS200 is slightly larger, not big enough to matter. The major difference, of course, is the lens. So the ZS100 has a Leica branded 25 to 250 millimeter equivalent. That's f2.8 at the wide end and f5.9 at the long end. The lens on the ZS200, which of course the ZS200 is also called the TZ200, as is the 100, the TZ100 outside North America. And of course it's ZS for our friends in Canada. The lens, much more ambitious. 24 to 360 millimeter equivalent, gives up some speed to the ZS100. So it's f3.3 at the wide end and f6.4 at the long end. However, the ZS200 has 5-axis image stabilization, which the 100 does not. And what I have found is the stabilization on this lens, very good, and makes up pretty much for that difference in lens speed. You can handhold this at full telephoto easily at 125th of a second, and you can go lower than that if you're very careful. Sometimes you need to brace the camera when you're taking a shot, but I've been pretty pleased with the way that this lens is performing. The other thing that I noticed about this lens is sharp into the corners, wide open. And that's true at all focal lengths that I've looked at. My main issue with the ZS100 is that although the lens is very sharp in the center at all focal lengths, at wide open, at wide angle, it's soft in the corners. In fact, at the widest angle at f2.8. It's actually most of the softness is actually in the lower right corner. And I'm going to do a follow-up video where I examine that more closely so you all get a feel for the differences. But what I'm seeing is the ZS100 lens may be a touch sharper in the center than the ZS200 lens. However, the fact that this lens is sharp across the frame, even wide open, is a major advantage. Now, you know, for things like street photography, it doesn't matter that much because most of the time you're not worried about what's in the corners. But if you're out and you want to shoot a landscape, this camera, I have to stop down to the ZS100. I have to stop down to f5.6 at the wide end to get it sharp across the frame. No need to do that with the ZS200. Also, the viewfinder on the ZS200 is bigger and better. Still a field sequential viewfinder, so there are going to be some folks who have problems with seeing color tiering. I'm not one of those. I've never noticed that. Menu system, it's the up-to-date modern Lumix menu system, whereas the ZS100 uses the previous menu system, which is not quite as well organized. So you've got all of the things that you find on the G95, the G9, the GH6. You find all of the, I shouldn't say all the features, but you can see it organized the same way. So that's very useful. It also has the My Menu setting so that you can add frequently accessed menu items to one place. Also has the L monochrome black and white profile, which made its first appearance, I believe, in the GX85. Does not have the L monochrome D. Okay, that's kind of a minor thing. If you're shooting black and white, you can set it to L monochrome and get that nice black and white Leica, which is what I think the L stands for, Leica look. One other thing that is kind of not good is no filter threads. I think it's because the lens mechanisms on these things, they don't want to put extra weight on here. Now, I do know that you can get the LensMate, I think it is, adapter for this camera. You can't get the magnetic filter adapters. I looked, those are not available for this lens barrel size. What I do is, and I actually had a change from the ZS100, is I use like a step-up ring. So on the ZS100, I was using a 43 to 52 millimeter step-up ring with a 52 millimeter filter and just sliding on the front of the lens barrel and holding it when I needed to do that. Needed to move up to a 46 to 52 millimeter step-up ring because this lens barrel is a little bit larger in diameter than the ZS100 lens. So these are my initial impressions that this camera really, to me, is just a pretty amazing achievement considering the range that this lens has. So I'm going to show some images in a slideshow to kind of show the versatility of this camera. I've shot video with it, 1080p video. I should mention that the 5-axis image stabilization is not available in 4K video, so that's a problem. There also is a bit of a crop in 4K video. I think your 24 becomes around a 30 something. So a little narrower field of view, but more telephoto. I don't shoot 4K that often, so it doesn't really matter that much to me. So one set of images that I got with this, and I want to talk about, and I will show these in the slideshow, is we have up over in Oak Park, there is a park called Austin Gardens, which is really close to downtown Oak Park. It's just north of the main drag through Oak Park. And for the last 2 years, we've been fortunate enough to have a pair of red-shouldered hawks nest in that park and raise a brood. And the red-shouldered hawk is a smaller relative to the red-tailed hawk, if you know your birds. If you don't, you can look those up, but they are related, but the red-shouldered is significantly smaller than the red-tailed hawk. I mean, red-tailed hawks can carry off a cat. A red-shouldered hawk, chances are, can't do that. Anyway, so I went up there with this camera one day and went in, and the adults had already left, but one of their babies, and of course was a juvenile by now, was hanging around the park. And of course, growing up in a park with people in it, he was fairly tolerant of letting me get close enough to where I could get really good photos and video using the ZS200. So those are going to be in the slideshow. I've also used this camera for street photography, doing a lot of nature stuff as well, mainly because I get up in the morning and I want to go take a walk in the forest reserves around here. Don't always want to carry my G9 or my G95. Just want to grab something and go. Maybe I have something to do after that, where I don't want to have a camera left in the car that's a decent camera. And this one I can just carry with me. Don't need to leave it in the car. So anyway, slideshow's coming up. If this was useful to you, interesting, please hit that like button. It's a big help to me. If you have any questions or comments or observations about this camera, pop them down below. I try to respond as soon as possible to comments. Here's the slideshow. I'm Todd Banner. I will see you next time.